Uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
This is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. Trust me, I'm like a smart person. I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius. I had the best words. Tolerated. I know words. Mike Pounds. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation. But there's no better word than stupid. Anonymous, really anonymous. I'm very highly educated. One of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. I had the best words. God bless the United States.
Around the nation, Waldorf Nation, hey everybody, welcome to the show. We got a good one today on this Tuesday afternoon. Oh boy, exploding trees. The newest explanation by the Trump administration of the wildfires in California. We then are also going to talk about an ex-RNC spokesperson that went off. Actually, a really strong article from a Republican fed up with Donald Trump. So that's very interesting. This is somebody, of course, who worked for
Please clap.
Jeb Bush. Nonetheless, pretty interesting. Very interesting. We're going to talk about that. Then we've got another elected official spreading QAnon garbage who was called out, actually, by a reporter. Her response is amazing. Amazing. And then we have some updates, of course, an update on Breonna Taylor. And then we have a whistleblower complaint from an ICE detention center. It's going to boil your blood. That is just a horrific story. And I'm going to warn you guys. It's going to be very difficult to listen to, but it's really important to know what's going on in these ICE detention centers. Not nearly enough attention gets, gets focused on these detention centers that we still have. And so, I mean, this story, like I said, it's heartbreaking. It's infuriating. So we're going to talk about that. We are going to talk about that. All right. Already the chat. Zach Sherman says, I'm pretty scared that right-wing propagandists are priming their followers or listeners for violence and to not accept the results of the election. Yeah, that's another thing that's going on. Domestic coniferous terrorists. You guys. That's great. That's really great. Genocide is what's going on. You're absolutely right, Cora. You're absolutely right. So we're going to talk about that. Before we go into it, please like and share the stream. Very important that this message gets out to as many people as possible. It really does help us out greatly. These are important issues that we need to be talking about, especially with the genocide going on inside of ICE detention centers. So very important to share. All right. That said, let's first go into climate change, another important issue. So, with climatologists have been sending warnings of increased forest fires as an effect of climate change as far as back as decades, the president in the face of devastating wildfires in California, has his own theories. Exploding trees.
When trees fall down after a short period of time, about 18 months, they become very dry. They become really like a matchstick. And they get up, there's no more water pouring through. And they become very, very, they just explode. They can explode. Also, leaves. When you have years of leaves, dried leaves on the ground, it just sets it up. It's really a fuel for a fire.
Exploding trees. I think it should be very obvious that trees do not explode. Now, look, dry conditions exacerbated by climate change, reducing the amounts of rainfall, along with things, of course, like lightning strikes, campfires, that are out of control, or gender reveal parties. They could be the spark that starts these devastating wildfires. But, of course, underlying all of that are the dry conditions that make it much more likely for there to be an out-of-control wildfire. However, of course, Donald Trump seems to only understand part of the issue here, and that's the dry conditions, but doesn't really understand anything else.
Obviously, forest management in California is very important, and now it extends to Washington and extends also to Oregon. There has to be good, strong forest management, which I've been talking about for 3 years with the state, so hopefully they'll start doing that.
So he thinks that, no, it doesn't have anything to do with climate change. No, we just have to do forest management. We just have to rake the forests. Again, that's exactly, and he even said, I've been calling for that for 3 years. Got to have very strong forest management because we're not going to do anything about climate change. In fact, here he is talking about raking the forest the last time there were devastating forest fires.
You've got to take care of the floors, the floors of the forests, very important. I was with the president of Finland, and he said, we have a much different, we're a forest nation. He called it a forest nation. And they spend a lot of time on raking and cleaning and doing things, and they don't have any problem. And when it is, it's a very small problem.
Actually, they do have a problem with forest fires as well. And so the Finnish president was like, no, that's not true at all. That's not what we do. Look, the guy's a moron. But look, here's the thing about Trump. The answer is right in front of him, right? But he can't do it. He can't admit it. He can't admit it that climate change plays a role in these forest fires by creating drier conditions that lead to, again, out of control forest fires. But no, it's forest management. We just need to rake the forests. Look, there's always going to be forest fires, right? Yeah, of course. It's part of the cycle of renewal. In some cases, forest fires for clearing out, old dead forests and all that help for the cycle of renewal, okay? And help new things to grow by eliminating yield. But at the same time, the thing about these fires is they've been exacerbated by climate change, and they've actually damaged human settlements, right? Cities, towns. And not only that, but because of the conditions, are actually more difficult to put out and do more extensive damage. And so that's not good. That's not good at all. In fact, you know what? According to researchers at the University of California, they found, and they wrote this in a 2019 report, that in the American West, climate change has increased the risk of fire weather fivefold and has doubled how much land is burned. So now it's not just cycle of renewal, it's also even more destructive than it was before. And again, destroying towns, things like that. And so it's also projected to get worse as climate change gets worse. So that's not a problem that's going to be solved with quote-unquote forest management. And by the way, speaking of that, right, California has 33 million acres of forest. That comprises about a third of the state. You know how big California is. Again, 33 million acres of forest land. How much money and how much time, how many people would be required to go and rake that amount of forest constantly as well? It's not like, it's one and done. It's like building an interstate highway. You just do it once and then you're good to go. No, there's maintenance. Well, same for the highway, but there's constant cleaning. What's going to happen every fall? No, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's a stupid idea. But look, it would be super expensive as opposed to, say, I don't know, actually maybe doing something about climate change. Maybe to try to reduce our emissions, Maybe do a Green New Deal. Maybe create millions of jobs to go along with it. Help the environment. It seems like, it would actually be easier than just to continue to try to, quote unquote, maintain and continue raking the forest as things continue to get worse. And look, if your overall plan is to say, well, hey, look, if things get warmer and the forests become deserts, well, then we won't have to spend as much raking the forest because there won't be any. Well, I mean, that's some real big brain idea right there. But I would rather not have most of the country become barren desert. I'm just saying. I mean, yeah, you'd save money on the raking, but, you would have some other issues as well. Look, it's pretty dumb that someone could actually come up with that idea. But again, I don't put it past Republicans at all. They openly deny climate change while secretly knowing that it's a problem, but not giving a shit because the money's too damn good. I don't know if Donald Trump's in that camp. I really do think he's that stupid. I mean, just the inability or unwillingness to see the problem that is obvious and right in your face. The solution is also in your face. Do something about climate change, and he can't do that. I mean, is it willful ignorance, or is it just pure stupidity? Maybe it's both. I don't know. Maybe he's coming up with comically stupid solutions so that he can avoid the real problems. Or maybe he really does believe that all we got to do is very strong forest management and rake the forests, and then we won't have a problem like Finland. I don't know. I don't know. I cannot get in the mind of a moron. And you know what? Something tells me that if I ever were able to see into his mind, just the attempt would drive me insane. Clowns everywhere. Okay, anyway. All right. Let's go to the next one here. A former Republican spokesperson is going after Donald Trump in and he did so in a scathing op-ed for the conservative news site The Bulwark. So this is really interesting. The op-ed was written by Tim Miller. So now Tim Miller, for those of you who are not, don't know who he is, which I didn't know who he was for until this article, but basically he served as the RNC's deputy communications director on Mitt Romney's 2012 run for president, and was later tapped as communications director on Jeb Bush's 2016 presidential campaign. So, of course,
please clap.
We have to play the obligatory please clap, just because, yeah. So he's got some beef with Donald Trump, which is pretty obvious. But then again, if you're somebody who generally believes in, I guess, quote unquote, conservative values, then you should also be against Donald Trump. So this is one of the anti-Trumpers who did not end up swearing fealty to Donald Trump, like your Ben Shapiro's and your Candace Owens and people like that. And so that's really interesting. So, and I say that because, again, this is an incredibly strong op-ed. So let me read some excerpts of it. And this is, again, is about Donald Trump's Nevada rally in Henderson. So he called this rally a, quote, truly shocking and unimaginably wheels-off undertaking, given that it came amid a pandemic that is still killing 1,000 Americans a day, and with wildfires making much of the West Coast uninhabitable. So, I mean, already you have an admission that we have a pandemic that's killing thousands of people. Again, you're already miles ahead of the rest of the Republican Party, and admitting that there are, that the wildfires are a problem, but of course not addressing climate change. And I don't know how this guy feels about climate change, but, we'll see. Maybe later on, he'll start saying things about climate change, which would be a positive step in my view. But then going back to the rally here, he said, quote, "The president said that his opponent is a communist who would eliminate the suburbs and allow anarchists to burn down Hispanic businesses. He fabricated a charge about Democratic governor of Nevada tampering with ballots, declared that football is boring as hell, made fun of Chris Cuomo's ratings, joked about running for a third term, and said flag burners should go to jail for 1 year." So this is all the stuff, and to put it in context, he's framing this as the stuff that he found absolutely insane. He also shouted, quote, "I love the Hispanics, lied about what was said at the DNC, reintroduced the bigoted dog whistle use, an exaggerated emphasis on the middle name of Barack Hussein Obama, which he had told Bob Woodward he only does in private, said that NASA was almost closed before he got into office and had grass growing on the runways, and then once again implied support for extrajudicial killings by U.S. Marshals." So that's a lot of the stuff that this guy has criticized for Donald Trump for saying. And I joined him in that criticism because all of that is just a heap of nuts, just craziness, absolute insanity. But again, it's what to expect from a Trump rally, of course. Now, what's interesting about that as well, and he's like, Obama being a communist, it's ridiculous. Oh my God, this is a Republican who's saying, of course Obama's not a communist. And of course, Joe Biden doesn't want anarchy and to burn down businesses and doesn't want the mob to... Yeah, of course, these are facts. These are objective facts. And it's just, I don't know, to hear a Republican, an ex-RNC spokesperson saying, well, obviously, duh, of course Obama's not a communist. It's kind of refreshing. It's kind of surprising to me. And so, but look, this kind of gives me, John McCain vibes in a way, which I guess would make sense because this person, it did work for the establishment, it's establishment Republicans. Do you remember John McCain, for all the things that he did terribly and wrong and all the reasons that I have issues with John McCain, he once did call Obama a decent guy. Oh, okay. Now, look, I also have issues with Obama, but the right wing constantly makes things up about Obama, makes things up about, Democrats who are actually center right. They're a center right party, but not if you ask Republicans. Most Republicans, again, make up insane things. Look, if Obama was a quarter of socialist, as the right wing paints him, maybe we might have a public option right now, instead of maybe possibly kind of maybe a little bit campaigning on it, as Joe Biden is at this time. And so there's more though. So he doesn't just go after Donald Trump, which is pretty easy to do if you're a Republican, right? But also the Trump supporters. And I thought this was interesting. Quote, "As Trump began to sidebar about Obama supposedly being caught spying on him, he eyed an attendee who was beginning a lock him up chant. He then egged on the overwhelmingly unmasked crowd into a frenzy in which they projected airborne spittle throughout the building in an attempt to will to life the fantasy that their wannabe strongman president might jail his predecessor, the first black president, for an imaginary crime." Now, he adds, "This was not the only coronavirus projectile laden with racial invective emitted by the attendees. Following the removal of a protester, presumably a Black Lives Matter activist, although it wasn't clear from the video, the crowd began bellowing that oh-so-clever parlay, 'All lives matter, all lives matter.' He then also said, 'It is easy for those who cover the politics of this to let that slip into a tit-for-tat between two political actors fighting over pandemic politics in an election year. The event was so much worse than that. Everything about it was fucking appalling.'" I gotta say, this is probably about the most honest I've ever seen a so-called Republican, right? I mean, it feels like I could have a conversation with this guy. which would be, probably fruitful and interesting, even if we would, disagree on policy positions. This guy seems to be sane. All right, more. On what he found so appalling, he said, it was so appalling that it would stand as the single most appalling and reckless political event hosted by any presidential nominee in my lifetime before yesterday by a long shot, if you just didn't count anything else Donald Trump did. Again, for an example, the Tulsa rally. You remember the Tulsa rally, right? That rally likely contributed to a spike in coronavirus cases. And it also might have, led to the death of Herman Cain, which I've talked about before. So, but anyway, Miller concluded, quote, all the president's grotesqueries matter. This is just the latest. So, look, that's pretty strong, right? That's a really strong, again, from a Republican, right? Now, here's what Miller misses, right? Donald Trump is a mirror for the Republican Party. And I've said this for quite some time, right? He reflects back what the conservative movement, what the voters want, right? And who they really are. And understand that's Donald Trump, right? He is a clown. He is an entertainer. He wants money and power, right? And so in order to attain that, and of course he wants affection as well, in order to get those things, he tells you what you want to hear, right? And he has found the Republican Party most receptive to that because they don't sense bullshit. They're easily duped, right? And of course, it's really easy to demagogue and scapegoat. And so, natural fit for the Republican Party, right? And also, Donald Trump's greedy as hell, so policy-wise, it makes sense to be in, with the party that loves to give billionaires or alleged billionaires, rich people, lots and lots of money. And so there's that, right? And so, again, Donald Trump has a natural fit within the Republican Party as he is a mirror of what they really, truly believe, right? He reflects back this, authoritarian, racist, xenophobic mindset. Again, their problem, the voters' problem, mainly comes from minorities. And that's what Trumpism is, really, when you break it down. It's racism, bigotry, and xenophobia. And it's all based on fear. Again, you have Republicans that openly spread the idea that Hispanic people are replacing white voters. It's the whole, great replacement theory that gets talked about in conservative circles. And so what Trump does is that he reaches deeply into the fears of white, affluent American males and say that you are the victim. These minorities, they're coming to get you. They're coming to your cities. They're going to break into your home. They're going to rape your wife. They're going to shoot your dog. They're going to rob you blind. And then they're going to take your money. They're going to take your job, your property, your religion, your freedom. And we're going to give it to those minorities, right? Now, all of that is completely made up and nonsensical. But it doesn't matter because they believe it. They believe it with every fiber of their being. And maybe if they don't believe it, they still have an irrational hatred of the other, of brown people. And that's what it is. And so it's far more than just disagreements about tax policy, right? It's not about that anymore. The Republican Party, conservatives, Trumpists, they live in a completely different world, right? Now, we live in the real world, okay, where there is nuance. They live in the topsy-turvy world where QAnon is real, Hillary eats children, Barack Obama is the deep state, but also a Muslim jihadi, and a LGBTQ Trojan horse for Marxism and pedophilia, and it just and on and on. And then there's this secret cabal of evil extra-dimensional aliens that are going to shove you into hobbit homes and all this, just complete absolute insanity, right? That world, by the way, did not materialize on its own. That worldview was pushed by conservative media. You've got Rush Limbaugh, you've got Alex Jones, you got that Klingerschmidt guy, Pat Robertson. Almost all of the right-wing media juggernaut was designed to lie and distract people. And of course, as the grift continued to go on over decades, you had to start coming up with even more insane theories and lies to try to get people to basically vote in favor of the candidates that are going to save you tax money, right? Again, if you have, these right-wing conservative billionaires like the Koch brothers don't want to pay taxes, right? Well, I mean, how are they going to continue to pick your pockets if there's a unified front of workers, working class people, and middle class people, or if you divide the classes and you make them fight each other over ridiculous things and conspiracy theories? I think the answer is pretty obvious why Republicans lean so hard on these conspiracy theorists. And they've had to. They've had to rely on radicalism and on radicalizing their basically their voters into voting for their against their own, economic self-interests. And a lot of these people, unfortunately, are really, really happy to be able to do that because they are afraid and they're conditioned to be racist. And a lot of it, party-wise, has to do with the coming demographic shift. America is getting more diverse, and there's a lot of people that are really, really afraid about, of that fact, and they're doing everything that they can to try to, to try to scare people, basically. And the billionaires, again, pick your pocket. Makes it easy when you're fighting each other. And so understand that the sooner actual conservatives realize this, the sooner I think they're going to realize a lot of their ideology, a lot of their other, messages are also wrong. So, look, I'm hoping Mr. Tim Miller, since this was a pretty strong op-ed, seems to be fairly smart, at least when it comes to identifying the problems with Trump voters. Who knows? Maybe this is somebody that, who sees these problems with the Republican Party is somebody that might come over maybe to the left. Or we could also have the other option, which is bad, basically trying to remake the Democratic Party into what the old Republican Party used to be before QAnon and racism took over. So, I mean, we'll have to see what happens. But it would be pretty interesting to have a discussion with him and see where he's coming from and where he is. All right. Now, speaking of insane Republicans, we have another example of that. Let's see. Just some comments here that I want to read. Invalid error 505, Koch brother. True. There's only one now. RB says all those things were mapped out in the Powell Manifesto. It's true. I saw a Trump impersonator talking about exploding trees. Had no idea Trump actually said that. Yeah, right? Ball Python Wizard says the Republican Party is now the tabloid reader party. It's true. Harriet Garr says you just can't reach these rubes. Yeah, it's a cult, as I'm going to get into. So they think Trump's doing a good job. They ignore the trash and they say trade deals and deregulation. Oh boy. Yeah. All right. So let's get to the next one. A Republican representative in Washington state recently went after a reporter for doing his job, for calling out her attempting to push QAnon and other conspiracy stuff onto her constituents. So now this is correspondent Daniel Walters, and he had received a profane and homophobic response after reporting that State Representative Jenny Graham had been posting conspiracy theories on her Facebook. So now this was in an article in the for the Inlander, right? And so here's what Walters writes. In December, Washington State Representative Jenny Graham, a Republican in the 6th District, posted a Facebook link to an article at a site called Vaccine Impact. Already. Vaccine Impact. Now, this particular article was about the weaknesses of the pertussis vaccine, right? The article, of course, in question basically tried to make or tried to perpetuate the the idea, I guess, that vaccines are related to causing autism, right? And so that's obviously been debunked quite a lot. And nonetheless, anti-vaxxers tend to continue to hold on to that discredited Wakefield study as quote-unquote proof that vaccines are bad and that they don't work. So now that site and that article perpetuated that myth, but that same place also has become a QAnon conspiracy site. So now some of the claims made by this website claim that there is a globalist pedophile ring that is harvesting children's blood just before they are murdered as sacrifices to Satan. So just to show you, where you're at on that. So if you're posting links from Vaccine Impact, odds are you're an idiot. I'm just saying. Okay, anyway. There was another Facebook post that was pointed out in the Inlander. In that, Graham wrote that, quote, the appetite to have sex with children as young as infants is a growing business, and linked to a blog post that makes a claim that the significant portion of 460,000 missing children, quote, end up in sex dungeons to be exploited and repeatedly raped by literal demons. Look, is there an issue with trafficking? Yes, there is. Or are they being raped by demons? Don't think so. Now, in case you're wondering what he meant by literal demons, because look, you could say the people who do this, they're demonic. They're such bad people. No, he actually means that these are reptilian human hybrids put into positions of power by evil extra-dimensional beings. So, no, they're not, there's no mistake there, right? They mean what they say. All right. So, this is obvious crackpot conspiracy nonsense. All right. So, nonetheless, Walters goes out of his way to be like, look, she didn't know that. Maybe. I mean, maybe she didn't really read into that. And he puts that in the article. In fact, the article is titled, Representative Jenny Graham forwarded her Facebook followers to bizarre conspiracy sites without realizing it. Okay, so it's like, hey man, sometimes you post some weird things and you get a link that you kind of agree with and you post it on your website. And Graham herself says, well, I didn't really agree with everything on that site. I didn't really read into it. But, the article itself, I mean, it's fine. Makes my point. Does it, though? I mean, there's a lot of craziness in what you were posting and then, backed up by more craziness in that entire website. But nonetheless, he writes, she was unaware of the weird reviews on those sites, but didn't express regret about sharing the links. But here's where I think he's being a little too fair. Because, look, Graham, and he even points it out as well, has been pushing back against fact checks on some of those articles on Facebook. In June, for example, Facebook flagged a post that Graham shared as false for incorrectly suggesting that coronavirus expert Anthony Fauci was in favor of rushing a vaccine. Anthony Fauci is not in favor of rushing a vaccine. I guess you can kind of make that mistake, right? Like, because everybody wants a vaccine. Well, unless you're an anti-vaxxer, of course. But at the same time, Fauci says, no, we can't rush a vaccine. We have to have it go through the proper testing to make sure that it not only is safe, but it's also that it also works and doesn't have any side effects down the road. And so that's kind of an important thing. You want to make sure these vaccines are safe. Sure. And so I guess that's a mistake that you can make, right? But there was another post in August where Graham objected to Facebook flagging a video as incorrect that argued that masks were ineffective and that hydroxychloroquine cured coronavirus. of which there, of course, is no evidence that that hydroxychloroquine cures coronavirus. And so that is right now objectively false. Okay. And this is according to medical experts, by the way, who dispute these claims. Now, Graham argues, the issue's not settled. Okay, but wait a minute. Okay, like medical professionals are looking into it, right? Medical professionals so far have said, no, masks are probably the most effective way of preventing the spread of coronavirus. And if everybody wore masks, then we would see a massive drop in about 2 to 3 months. That's what medical experts are saying. And medical experts have also said coronavirus is not cured by hydroxychloroquine. It can be helpful in some patients who are severely affected, along with, of course, other medications. And it really also depends on your age and all that stuff. Okay. So there's a little bit of nuance in there, but it's not at all what she would post it, right? Graham says, fact checkers, overstepping your bounds. Well, wait a minute. Fact checkers are supposed to check facts and to label things as misleading or incorrect if there are no facts to back up the original claim. Okay, but she says, who fact checks the fact checkers? The people who have the facts. And generally, those are the people that know more about healthcare and medicine than we do. So generally, you would allow them to. You would think you'd allow them to do their jobs, right? Because their whole job is, of course, to, I wouldn't say. I guess their whole job is not to, fact check people on the internet, but that's the fact checkers, and they go and they research the studies, and they go, oh, okay, this is what the doctors have found. This is what they're saying. This is what the studies say. Okay, now we can deem this to be correct or incorrect, which is, again, what they're supposed to do. But regardless, Jenny Graham, not happy about this. Very upset, actually. As Walters writes, following this article, after it was published, quote, State Representative Jenny Graham called me on my cell phone the day the Inlander published my story about her unwittingly linking to conspiracy theory posts on Facebook. I called her back immediately, while she was still leaving a voicemail, and was greeted with 2 blasts of profanity. So, let me just give you what she said. She said she called him a cocksucker and said, don't ever call me again. She also left him a voicemail. Quote, Daniel, you lying piece of shit. You've done it. You have started it. Don't you ever call me again. Do you understand? Don't you ever, and you tell your buddies not to call me either. It's on. If you think for 1 minute you're going to pull this crap and you're going to walk away from it, you're nuts. Somebody sounds a little nuts right there. And that message, that's nuts. She sounds like a crazy, unhinged person. It's important to note, by the way, that despite that message, Graham never reached out to the paper. Never called out any, factual inaccuracies, never even made any complaints. Not with the site itself. I mean, she could say, hey, look, I get it. You got it wrong. I don't believe in these conspiracy theories. They are nuts. Maybe I should do some better sourcing for what I believe in. Okay, I made a mistake here. I appreciate you fact checking me, keeping me on, keeping me with the facts. Sure, I appreciate that. She instead did not do that, as you heard, and went to her echo chamber on Facebook in order to complain. Now, Walters writes about that, quote, across at least 15 separate Facebook posts and numerous Facebook comments, she publicly called me things like disgusting, hateful, sleazy, lying piece of dung. She accused me of not caring about human suffering and attacking human trafficking victims and of sacrificing real victims to push delusions and lies. Wow. That No, that is some amazing ass projection. Holy shit. Now, she also wrote that she was looking for a lawyer in order to sue the inlander. Good luck on that one. I guess maybe she's going after libel or something. I don't know. I have no idea. I suspect that she doesn't either. Because when asked directly by a former Spokane GOP chair what was false about the article, Graham declined to point out to any specific line in the story that was untrue. So she don't even know. Look, that's probably because it was all true and she did not like it. She got triggered. So there's two possibilities here. She's a conspiracy theorist. She got caught. Or the other possibility is she knows it's all bullshit, but plays to it because it's very popular among the right. Like QAnon. Millions of followers now. A lot of Republicans believe in this stuff. And it's spreading all over social media. So, look, I'm just saying, if you want to, the time is ripe for grifters on the right wing. All they have to do is to start, tweeting WW1GA or whatever, right? And hashtag save the children. And suddenly, you're going to get a big audience on the right wing. And you can take it wherever you want from there. I'm just saying, the grift is real, and it is on the right. And so there's a possibility that she is part of that grift. And again, you have Republicans that are now, these QAnon people that are now winning Republican seats, that are winning Republican primaries. And so it is possibly a path to power as well. But it is really interesting. Now, here's the funny thing about this entire thing, about the Republican Party. The right wing, because of all this stuff, doesn't have to talk about policy. Why? It's because their policy mainly caters to rich people, right? To the donor class. So it actually works out really good for them that there's this insane stuff everywhere. Evil extra-dimensional beings and the lizard people and the harming the children. And this is B-movie stuff, right? And yet, you have millions of supposedly functional, well-adjusted adults who are falling into this stuff, who are believing it, and as a result, vote Republican. And so, at this point, you can't really even call the Republican Party a party anymore, a political party. What it has turned into is basically a QAnon conspiracy theory cult. And that's it. That's it. All right. What we're going to do here is I'm going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll thank some patrons, and then we're going to go to the forced sterilization story. This is disastrous. This is horrifying, and it's coming up next. So be prepared, everybody. Until then, please like and share the stream, and we'll be back in a minute. Round the nation.
Mike Pounds. Silent. Tolerate.
Welcome back to the show, Around the Nation, right here, Waldorf Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. All right, so real quick break, but let's kind of give a shout out here to some of the members first. Patrons, Sarhai Shoshenka. I'm pretty sure I butchered your name, but I do appreciate you becoming a patron anyway, and supporting independent progressive media. Y. Sang Steven, also, thank you for becoming a patron. And then I want to thank R.A. Monagold and Terry Walsh for becoming channel members. That's, of course, channel membership. Become one by hitting the join button below and support independent progressive media. All right. Super chats here. Virginia Thomas says about 400 or 500 Roombas should take care of the forest. What if they roll over poop? You ever seen a Roomba roll over poop? Not good. Very bad. Very sad. I guess at least if you have a carpet. Adrian Benenfield says, I doubt Hobbit homes would mean giving people homes to live in. Republican conspiracy theorists wouldn't make up something that gives to people. But then also points out, I'd like a Hobbit home. They look nice. Wouldn't we all like a home? Hobbit home. Nice little place. Shire's very beautiful, especially this time of year. All right. Let's see. When we're done terraforming the Earth and killing off the majority of people, do you think people will say climate change is not real? This thing of the left asks, or this thing in the left asks. I don't know who's going to be left to say it's not real. I'm just saying. All right. Anyway, let's go to what's going down on the border. There are some bombshell allegations against immigration and customs enforcement. Now, in this allegation, they not only detail the lack of medical treatment at these facilities that house migrants, especially in relation to coronavirus, but also forced sterilization without consent. So now, let me get to the details from Law and Crime. Legal advocacy groups on Monday filed a whistleblower complaint on behalf of a nurse at an ICE detention center in Irwin County, Georgia. And this complaint documents, quote, jarring medical neglect within the facility, including a refusal to test detainees for the novel coronavirus and an extremely high rate of hysterectomies being performed on immigrant women. So the nurse who brought this complaint is Dawn Wooten, and she was employed at the Irwin County Detention Center in Georgia, which is operated by a private prison corporation called LaSalle Corrections. And so already you have this lack of oversight in this private prison facility for migrants, and it turns out it's a house of horrors. So now the complaint filed with the Office of the Inspector General for the Department of Homeland Security by advocacy groups Project South, Georgia Detention Watch, Georgia Latino Alliance for Human Rights, and South Georgia Immigrant Support Network detailed these abuses. In the complaint, multiple women came forward to tell Project South that women in ICDC were subject to forced sterilization procedures by one particular doctor. Many of the women who underwent these procedures were reportedly confused when asked to explain why they ended up having the surgery, which shows that it is non-consensual. And so once we get into the details, of course, it gets even worse. But already it's sickening. This is real, concentration camp level stuff. And absolutely just disgusting. So now let me get into some details, right? Recently, a detained immigrant told Project South that she talked to 5 different women detained at ICDC between October and December of 2019 who had a hysterectomy done. When she talked to them about the surgery, the women reacted confused when explaining why they had one done. When I met all these women who had surgeries, I thought this was like an experimental concentration camp. It was like they're experimenting with our bodies, according to the detainee. According to Wooten, ICDC consistently used a particular gynecologist outside of the facility who almost always opted to remove all or part of the uterus of his female detainee patients. So understand, right? They went to this outside doctor that basically was pretty infamous for removing a woman's ability to procreate. Now, Wooten said, quote, everybody he sees has a hysterectomy. Just about everybody. Everybody's uterus can't be that bad. No. Now, she also said, quote, we've questioned among ourselves, like, goodness, he's taken everybody's stuff out. That's his specialty. They call him the uterus collector. I know that's ugly. Is he collecting these things or something? Everybody he sees. He's taking all their uteruses out, or he's taking their tubes out. What in the world? Well, what in the world indeed? Again, either there is some sort of weird-ass fascination with doing irreparable harm to these women's reproductive rights and reproductive tracts, or maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's something else. Either way, it's incredibly sinister, and as a lot of you point out, tantamount to genocide. All right. So now Wooten, who's being represented by the Government Accountability Project, also confirmed that many of the detained women told her that they didn't understand why they were being forced into this procedure. She explained that some of the nurses who didn't speak Spanish said they obtained consent from detainees by, quote, simply Googling Spanish. Right. Oh, yeah, no, that's totally believable. Sure. The complaint also details several accounts from detainees, including one woman who was not properly anesthetized during the procedure and heard the aforementioned doctor tell the nurse that he had mistakenly removed the wrong ovary, resulting in her losing all of her reproductive ability. But I'm sure, of course, that's an accident, right? Another said she was scheduled for the procedure, but when she questioned why it was necessary, she was given 3 different answers. Completely different answers. One told her that she had an ovarian cyst, and it was just going to be a 20-minute procedure, in and out. You're going to drill a couple of holes in her stomach, drain the cyst, everything will be fine. Then she heard from an officer that she was going to have a hysterectomy, to have her womb removed. And the hospital, by the way, that she was being transported to actually refused her. Why? It's because she had coronavirus. She tested positive for antibodies and was transferred back to ICDC, where the nurse said that the procedure she was going to have entailed dilating her vagina and scraping off tissue. So there's 3 different procedures. No one knows what the hell they're doing. I mean, insane. Another nurse told her procedure was to mitigate heavy menstrual bleeding, to which the woman had never experienced and never complained about. And when she explained that to the nurse, she responded by getting angry and agitated and yelling at her. So, no, there is something seriously wrong here. I mean, seriously. You have the creepy doctor, you have the nurses that are getting angry and yelling at people. You have the many different contradictions and what is actually happening. You have people waking up in the middle of surgeries, overhearing things like, we removed the wrong, ovary, and now, oh, look at that, you're sterile. Sorry about that. No. And you add on to it, by the way, COVID-19 that has been spreading all throughout these detention centers, and they're literally doing nothing about that. Nothing about that. I mean, it's a nightmare. This is out of a horror movie. It's horrible. And it's happening in Georgia, and no one seems to care. At least nobody in power. Nobody in power. Now, ICE did respond to the story with a statement that said, generally speaking, anonymous, unproven allegations made without any fact-checkable specifics, well, you could go in and, of course, you could, find a way to prove this, especially with these, women, if they, would volunteer themselves to prove that they have had these surgeries removed, that would be, Big corroboration right there. But they said, quote, made without any fact-checkable specifics should be treated with skepticism. They say that it takes all allegations seriously and defers to the DHS Office of Inspector General. The agency maintains the Irwin County Detention Center has been inspected multiple times, with and without warning, and that the facility has been found to be in compliance with performance-based national detention standards. Of course. Of course it has. Sure. No, I'm not buying it. Look, how many stories have we heard about the cruel and inhuman conditions inside of these detention centers? Quite a few, actually, from people inside getting messages out to the outside. A lot. In fact, you had congresswomen, the squad, visiting these places and documenting what had happened. And on that, how many ICE agents outed themselves on Facebook as white supremacists that despise Latino immigrants and lawmakers? Again, we saw the inside of those Facebook groups, what they posted, what they said. Remember how they treated Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They called her all sorts of terrible names, posted derogatory images of her doing sex acts to Donald Trump. That is who they are. Is it any surprise that they would take this a step further and literally mutilate bodies? It's who they are. And look, here's the thing about that, right? We know there's a lot of white supremacists that are in law enforcement now, that are in the government. We have no screen for them, and we have no way to keep them out. And by the way, the government has tried very hard to not try to keep them out. The FBI commissioned reports and they put out reports after they'd commissioned them saying there is a real danger that law enforcement, especially ICE, has been taken over by white supremacists and neo-Nazis. There's a significant problem here. These right-wing extremist groups. And the Obama administration first said, we'll look into it. And then when Republicans got mad, they said, okay, we'll scale it down to like 1 or 2 people. And the Trump administration got rid of it completely. The investigations into right-wing terrorism as well. And right-wing infiltration into law enforcement. And ICE, again, big part of law enforcement. We know who ICE is. We know the agents inside of ICE. We know. And so is it a surprise to hear that these private prison corporations are employing people, ICE agents and doctors and nurses and people that, are mutilating other people that are Latino? Doesn't surprise me at all. And I think it might be purposeful. And I don't know for sure. But why else would you force sterilize immigrant women? They did this to black people as well, by the way. Not in this specific instance, but throughout history. They have done forced sterilizations on minorities, never on white people. It's really kind of strange how that worked out, but always on minorities. Okay? In this case, Latino minorities, Latino migrants. Why? Well, of course they don't want them to have children in America, because then those kids would become citizens of this country, and they don't want that. Nope. Remember, a lot of white supremacists believe in the Great Replacement. It is an insane conspiracy theory that is spread by neo-Nazis and white supremacists that goes basically like this, right? That Democrats are bringing in undocumented immigrants to have children in the United States, and that at some point they're going to have so many kids that they're going to outnumber white people, and then they're going to take over the country. That's what they believe in. That's what they believe in. And so to see somebody like that working for ICE, who literally, kicks water jugs so that people who, cross the desert to get to the border, well, whether it be refugees, migrants, whatever, right? Allowing them to die in their custody? Is it any surprise that they would do? Of course not. Again, considering who the people working for ICE is, who is in the administration, who is running DHS, and the people inside the administration making policy For example, Stephen Miller, formerly Steve Bannon? No. We know what they're about. We know who they are and what they're about. You guys remember the story? Well, maybe you don't. But a long time ago, I did a story back in 2016 about Steve Bannon and what he really believes and how a lot of his beliefs were formed from the book, The Camp of the Saints. And that is an incredibly racist book written by a French author who, talked about the brown people and their invasion of Western America, or I'm sorry, the Western world, and as well as America. And it's just a deeply gross worldview that is informing our leadership in this country. That is a part of our leadership. It's just unconscionable. At the very least, we need to obviously continue this investigation, but also overall abolish ICE. Get rid of it. We got to get rid of it. It's not even necessary. We had Border Patrol before ICE, and we will still have Border Patrol after ICE. It is a redundant agency that is not necessary. These detention camps disbanded. These people need to get set free. I mean, it's it. Okay? We also, come November, need to kick out people like Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, and the rest of these disgusting white nationalists and ensure that they never, ever see the inside of the corridors of power ever again. I am afraid what's going to happen to immigrants, to migrants, to people of color, to American citizens if there is a second Donald Trump administration. I am very, very worried. And I think, if you're paying attention, you should be too. Abolish ICE. All right. You know what? I was going to do the good news on Breonna Taylor, but I think I'll save that for another day. Jesus. All right. Do I think MSM is what do I think MSM is going to say? They'll talk about it, but it'll be pretty benign. They're not going to, support things like abolish ICE or anything like that, but they'll talk about the allegations. I'm pretty sure of it. This is too big of a story not. How do we help the refugees now? I have no idea. I really don't have any idea of how to help them right now. I wish I did too, because I'd be the first one to share it. I guess just continue to try to raise awareness, spread the story around of what's really happening in these detention camps, and hopefully get enough people to try to raise an outrage that we, march on Washington to demand that these detention camps get shut down. Thank you, Invalidator 505. I appreciate that. It's just... This is a rough story. Fired up. All right. Anyway, I'm gonna go. I got a meeting pretty soon here, so I've got to get editing and post up the clips and all that. But maybe later I might stream something. So we'll see. Video game. So we'll see what happens. All right, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for the super chats. Please like and share the stream. If you haven't already, please subscribe for more shows. Very important that you do so. Helps out. All right. Thank you. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you tomorrow.
Please clap.
Why? You're getting nervous, man.
Oh, wow, I'm sorry.
Silence. Yosemite.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.